The autumn breeze rustled through the busy streets of South Chicago as a young boy made his way home from basketball practice. His worn-out sneakers hit the cracked sidewalk with each step, while his backpack, heavy with books and a basketball, bounced rhythmically against his shoulder blades. The sun was already starting to set, painting the sky in beautiful shades of orange and purple. The boy had promised his mom he'd be home before dark to help with his younger siblings. She worked 2 jobs to keep food on the table, and he knew every minute of help he could give meant one less worry for her. His friends often teased him about being a mama's boy, but he didn't care. He'd seen how hard she worked, how she'd skip meals sometimes just to make sure her kids had enough to eat. As he walked past the newly opened coffee shop on Monroe Street, something caught his eye. There, lying next to a parking meter, was a thick leather wallet. Its contents were partially spilled onto the sidewalk, creating a small trail of business cards that danced in the wind. The boy stopped, his heart racing a little. He looked around, but the busy street was filled with people rushing home from work, everyone too caught up in their own world to notice the lost wallet. He knelt down and carefully gathered the scattered cards, his hands trembling slightly as he realized what he was holding. The business cards belonged to someone named James Richardson, CEO of a major tech company. Inside the wallet, he found several $1,000s in crisp bills, multiple credit cards, and a family photo showing a man with kind eyes standing next to his wife and children. The boy's stomach growled, reminding him that he hadn't eaten since lunch. The money in the wallet could buy groceries for months, maybe even help with the electricity bill his mom was worried about. But then he remembered what his grandmother always told him during their Sunday morning talks. Character is what you do when nobody's watching. Through the coffee shop's window, he spotted a man in an expensive suit frantically patting his pockets, his face etched with worry. The man matched the photo in the wallet. The boy took a deep breath, squared his shoulders, and pushed open the heavy glass door of the coffee shop. The warm aroma of coffee and freshly baked pastries filled the air as he stepped inside. His worn sneakers squeaked against the polished floor, drawing a few curious glances from the after-work crowd. The man in the suit was now standing near a corner table, surrounded by other people in business attire, all of them helping him search. The boy's heart pounded in his chest as he approached the group. Some of the businessman's associates gave him questioning looks, probably wondering what a kid from the South Side was doing in this upscale coffee shop. But the boy had learned long ago not to let others' assumptions define him. "Excuse me, sir," he said, his voice steady despite his nerves. "Are you Mr. Richardson?" The worried man turned around, his expression a mix of stress and curiosity. "Yes, that's me." The boy held out the wallet. "I found this outside. I made sure to pick up all the cards that had fallen out." Mr. Richardson's face transformed from worry to disbelief, then to pure joy. He quickly checked the wallet's contents, his eyes widening at finding everything intact. The businessman's associates watched in amazement, their earlier skeptical looks replaced with smiles. "Young man," Mr. Richardson said, his voice thick with emotion, "do you have any idea how much money was in here?" "Yes, sir," the boy replied honestly. "But it wasn't mine to keep." Mr. Richardson reached for his wallet, presumably to offer a reward, but the boy held up his hand. "No thank you, sir. My mom always says doing the right thing is its own reward." He glanced at the darkening sky outside. "I should get going. My mom's expecting me home." As he turned to leave, Mr. Richardson called out, "Wait. At least tell me your name and where you live. I'd like to thank your mother for raising such an honorable young man." The boy hesitated for a moment before sharing his name and address. He didn't expect anything to come of it. Rich people usually forgot about kids from his neighborhood as soon as they were out of sight. But something about Mr. Richardson's expression seemed different, genuinely moved by the simple act of honesty. The walk home felt lighter somehow, even though his backpack was still just as heavy. The streetlights were starting to flicker on as he reached his street, where kids were being called in for dinner and the smell of home-cooked meals drifted from open windows. He smiled, knowing his mom would be proud of what he'd done, even if she never found out about it. What he didn't know was that his simple act of kindness had deeply touched Mr. Richardson, who sat in his expensive car that evening, thinking about the young boy's integrity. The businessman had grown up poor himself, and something about the boy's actions and demeanor had stirred old memories. As his driver navigated through the city's evening traffic, Mr. Richardson made a few phone calls, setting in motion events that would change the boy's life forever. But for now, the boy hurried up the creaky steps of his front porch, ready to help his mom with dinner and his siblings with their homework, unaware that tomorrow morning, a black SUV would pull up outside his house, bringing with it opportunities beyond his wildest dreams. The next morning arrived with golden sunlight streaming through the warm curtains of their small home. The boy's mom was already up, as usual, getting ready for her morning shift at the diner. The smell of instant coffee and slightly burnt toast filled their tiny kitchen. His younger sister and brother were still asleep, their peaceful breathing echoing from the room they shared. "Baby, can you make sure they eat breakfast and get to school on time?" his mom asked, adjusting her uniform. Dark circles under her eyes revealed another night of worrying about bills, but her smile remained warm and genuine. "I left some cereal in the cabinet." "Got it, Mom," the boy replied, helping her gather her things. He hadn't mentioned anything about the wallet from yesterday. Somehow, it felt like a dream now. The expensive coffee shop, the businessman in his fancy suit, all those crisp bills in the wallet. He'd almost convinced himself nothing would come of it. That's when they heard it, the sound of a powerful engine idling outside their house. His mom froze, her hand clutching her worn purse. Through the kitchen window, they could see a sleek black SUV parked in front of their home. In their neighborhood, fancy cars usually meant trouble. "Stay inside," his mom whispered, but before she could reach the door, there was a polite knock. The boy's heart started racing as he remembered giving his address to Mr. Richardson. Could it really be? His mom opened the door cautiously, revealing Mr. Richardson himself, dressed in another expensive suit, but somehow looking more approachable in the morning light. Behind him stood a woman holding a tablet and a leather portfolio. "Good morning," Mr. Richardson said warmly. "I hope we're not interrupting. I'm James Richardson, and your son did something extraordinary yesterday that I needed to thank him for properly." The boy's mom looked confused, glancing between Mr. Richardson and her son. "What's this about?" The boy stepped forward, finally sharing the story of the wallet. As he spoke, his mom's expression shifted from concern to pride, though her hands still nervously smoothed her diner uniform. "Ma'am," Mr. Richardson said, his voice sincere, "your son refused any reward yesterday, but his honesty touched me deeply. I grew up in circumstances not unlike his, single mother, tough neighborhood, big dreams but limited opportunities. Someone gave me a chance once, and it changed my life. I'd like to do the same for your son." The woman with the tablet stepped forward, introducing herself as Mr. Richardson's executive assistant. She explained that Mr. Richardson wanted to set up a mentorship program and educational fund for the boy. "We've prepared some documents for your review," she said kindly, noticing how overwhelmed the boy's mom looked. I need to get to work," his mom stammered, glancing at her watch. Her shift would start soon, and she couldn't afford to lose this job. "Please, let me call your workplace," Mr. Richardson offered. "One morning won't make a difference, and this is important. This could change your son's future." The boy watched as his mom's eyes welled up with tears. He knew she'd been praying for opportunities for her children, staying up late, looking at better schools they couldn't afford, dreaming of a future where her kids wouldn't have to struggle like she did. They invited Mr. Richardson and his assistant inside. The house was small and modest, with mismatched furniture and walls that needed fresh paint, but it was filled with love, family photos everywhere, homework assignments proudly displayed on the fridge, his sister's artwork decorating the walls. By now, his siblings were awake, peeking curiously from their room. Mr. Richardson smiled warmly at them, and something about his presence felt right, like this wasn't just about money or obligation, but about genuine care and connection. As they sat around their small kitchen table, Mr. Richardson shared more about his own childhood, the challenges, the dreams, the small acts of kindness that had helped him along the way. He spoke about the importance of education, mentorship, and giving back to the community. "Your son's honesty showed me something rare," he said, looking at the boy with respect. "It's not just about returning a wallet. It's about character, about doing the right thing even when it's hard. Those are qualities you can't teach. They come from good parenting and strong values." The boy's mom wiped away tears as she looked through the documents. There were plans for academic support, college preparation programs, and even assistance for the whole family. It wasn't charity, it was an investment in potential, in a future that suddenly seemed within reach. Outside, neighbors were starting to gather, curious about the expensive SUV parked on their street. But inside this small house, something magical was happening. Dreams were taking shape, hope was building, and a simple act of honesty was opening doors that had seemed forever closed. The boy sat quietly, watching his mom's hands shake slightly as she signed the papers. He thought about his grandmother's words about character, about his mom's endless sacrifices, about all the nights he'd stayed up dreaming of a better future. Sometimes he realized doing the right thing wasn't just its own reward. Sometimes it was the beginning of something much bigger. The weeks following Mr. Richardson's visit brought changes the boy's family never could have imagined. It started small: a new laptop for schoolwork, fresh notebooks, and proper running shoes for basketball practice. But the real changes went far deeper than material things. Mr. Richardson didn't just throw money at them and disappear. He showed up personally, usually early on Saturday mornings, to check on the boys' progress. They'd sit at the kitchen table, going over schoolwork while the smell of his mom's cooking filled the house. Sometimes his siblings would join them, and Mr. Richardson always made time to help them with their homework too. Success isn't just about being smart, Mr. Richardson explained one morning, helping the boy with a particularly tough math problem. It's about persistence. When I was your age, I struggled with math too, but I kept at it night after night until it started making sense. The boy's grades began to improve, not just because of the extra help, but because for the first time he could focus entirely on learning. He no longer had to worry about his mom's late shifts or watching his siblings every afternoon. Mr. Richardson had helped his mom find a better job with regular hours at one of his company's offices. She was learning computer skills, and her eyes had a new spark of confidence. Word spread quickly through the neighborhood about the wealthy businessman who'd taken an interest in their family. Some people were skeptical, whispering that it wouldn't last. Others asked if Mr. Richardson could help their kids too. The boy's mom handled it all with grace, sharing what she could with the neighbors while teaching her children to remain humble and grateful. One particular Wednesday afternoon, Mr. Richardson arrived unexpectedly at the boys' basketball practice. The old gym echoed with squeaking sneakers and bouncing balls as the team ran drills. The boy felt a mix of pride and nervousness seeing his mentor watching from the bleachers. "Your defensive moves need work," Mr. Richardson said afterward as they walked home together. "But your leadership on the court, that's something special. I watched how you helped your teammates, encouraged them when they missed shots. That's the kind of person who succeeds in life." They stopped at a small ice cream shop, something that had become their tradition after practice. As they sat on a bench outside, enjoying their treats, Mr. Richardson shared stories about his own journey. He talked about the mistakes he'd made, the doubts he'd faced, and the people who'd believed in him along the way. "You know," Mr. Richardson said, watching a group of kids ride past on their bikes, "when you returned my wallet that day, you reminded me of something important. Success isn't just measured by what we achieve for ourselves, it's about what we do for others." That evening during dinner, the boy's mom noticed something different about her son. He seemed more thoughtful, more focused. When his little sister struggled with her reading homework, he sat with her patiently, using the same encouraging tone Mr. Richardson used with him. The next morning before school, the boy found his mom sitting alone in the kitchen, looking at old family photos. She pulled him close and kissed his forehead, something he usually squirmed away from these days. "You know what makes me proudest?" she said softly. "It's not the better grades or the new opportunities. It's seeing that you're still the same kind, honest boy you've always been. Money and success don't mean anything if you lose yourself along the way." That afternoon, during his tutoring session with Mr. Richardson, the boy finally asked the question that had been on his mind for weeks: "Why are you doing all this for us?" Mr. Richardson set down his pen and thought for a moment. "Because 30 years ago, I was exactly where you are now. A kid with potential but limited opportunities. Someone took a chance on me, and it changed everything. But they did more than just help me succeed. They taught me the importance of passing it forward." He pulled out his phone and showed the boy a photo of a small community center being renovated. "This is just the beginning," he explained. "Your honesty inspired me to start a larger program for kids in this neighborhood. Sometimes it just takes one small act of integrity to set big changes in motion." The boy looked at the photo, then at his siblings playing in the next room, at his mom's new work certificates hanging on the wall, and finally at the man who had become so much more than just a mentor. He realized that returning that wallet hadn't just changed his life, it had created ripples that would touch many others. As the sun set outside their window, casting long shadows across their homework, the boy understood something profound. Sometimes the biggest dreams start with the smallest choices, and the truest wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch along the way. 3 months into their mentorship, winter had settled over the city, bringing with it both challenges and unexpected joys. The boy sat in Mr. Richardson's downtown office, his eyes wide as he looked out over the glittering cityscape from the 40th floor. It was a view he'd only seen in movies before, and now here he was, doing his homework at a real executive's desk. "You seem distracted today," Mr. Richardson noted, looking up from some paperwork. The boy had been staring at the same math problem for 10 minutes, his pencil tapping rhythmically against the desk. "Sorry," the boy said, shifting in the leather chair that still felt too fancy for him. "It's just, some kids at school have been saying things about you helping us. They say it's only because you feel guilty or want good publicity." Mr. Richardson set down his pen and wheeled his chair closer. The late afternoon sun cast long shadows across the office carpet. "What do you think about that?" he asked, his voice gentle but serious. The boy thought for a moment, remembering all the Saturday mornings Mr. Richardson had spent teaching him about computers, the way he always remembered his siblings' names and brought them books they'd mentioned liking, how he'd helped Mom set up her first email account. "I think they don't know you," the boy finally answered. "They don't see how you really care about helping people, not just giving them stuff." Mr. Richardson smiled, reaching into his desk drawer. He pulled out an old, worn photograph. In it, a young boy in threadbare clothes stood next to an elderly man in front of a small bookstore. "This was me," Mr. Richardson explained, "and the man who changed my life. Mr. Chen owned a bookstore in my neighborhood. He caught me trying to steal a math textbook because my family couldn't afford one." He paused, his fingers tracing the edge of the photo. "Instead of calling the police, he gave me the book and offered me a job. He taught me that everyone deserves a second chance and that true success comes from lifting others as you climb." The boy looked at the photo with new understanding. "Is that why you started the community center program?" "Partly," Mr. Richardson nodded. "But you were the spark. When you returned my wallet that day, you reminded me of that scared kid I used to be, trying to do the right thing even when life was hard. Sometimes we need to be reminded of our own past to see clearly what we should do in the present." Just then, Mr. Richardson's assistant knocked on the door. "Sir, the contractors for the community center are here for the meeting." "Come with me," Mr. Richardson said to the boy. "I think you should see this." They took the elevator down to a conference room where maps and blueprints covered a large table. The boy recognized his neighborhood in the plans. The old abandoned building on Cedar Street was being transformed into something beautiful. A place with classrooms, a computer lab, a basketball court, and even a small library. "We're calling it the Second Chance Center," Mr. Richardson explained as the contractors discussed construction timelines. "Because everyone deserves one. And you know what? We want you to help run the youth programs once it's ready." The boy's heart skipped a beat. "Me? But I'm just a kid." "You're not just a kid," Mr. Richardson corrected him. "You're a leader. I've seen how other children in the neighborhood look up to you, how you help them with homework, how you organize basketball games. Those are exactly the qualities we need." On the drive home that evening, the boy watched his neighborhood through new eyes. Past the worn buildings and empty lots, he could see possibility. He thought about other kids like him who just needed someone to believe in them. At home, he found his mom helping his sister with a science project. Their small living room table was covered in cotton balls and paint, a model solar system taking shape. His mom looked up with a knowing smile. She could always tell when he had something on his mind. Later that night, as they cleaned up after dinner, he told her about the community center plans and Mr. Richardson's offer. She stopped washing dishes and pulled him into a tight hug, her hands still soapy. "You city," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "This is what happens when you stay true to who you are. One good deed ripples out and touches so many lives." The boy went to bed that night with his head full of dreams, not just for himself anymore, but for his whole community. Through his window, he could see the street where he found the wallet all those months ago. It felt like a lifetime had passed since that day. As he drifted off to sleep, he thought about Mr. Chen's bookstore and the old photograph, about second chances, and about how sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices. Tomorrow, he decided he would start making lists of programs the community center could offer, ways to help other kids find their own paths to success. Spring brought more than just warmer weather to the neighborhood. The Second Chance Center was taking shape, its fresh paint and new windows standing out among the older buildings. The boy spent every free moment there, watching the transformation and helping wherever he could. One particularly busy Saturday morning, he was organizing donations for the new library when Mr. Richardson arrived with unexpected news. The governor's office called, he said, his eyes twinkling with excitement. They want to use our center as a model for similar programs across the state. They're sending a film crew next week to document what we're doing here. The boy's stomach did a nervous flip. They want to film us. They want to hear your story, Mr. Richardson corrected, about how returning a wallet led to all of this, but only if you're comfortable with it. That evening, during their usual family dinner, the boy shared the news. His little sister immediately started planning what she'd wear on camera, while his brother asked if they'd be on TV. But his mom noticed his quiet mood. "What's bothering you, baby?" she asked after the others had gone to bed. They sat on their small front porch, watching fireflies dance in the gathering dusk. "I'm scared," he admitted. "What if I mess up? What if people don't believe our story? Some kids at school already say it's too good to be true." His mom wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "Remember what your grandma always says about truth. It stands on its own feet. You just need to speak from your heart." The next week passed in a blur of preparation. The community center buzzed with activity as final touches were added. Local families volunteered to help clean and organize, everyone wanting to be part of this historic moment for their neighborhood. On the morning of the filming, the boy arrived early to find Mr. Richardson already there, helping set up chairs in the main room. They worked side by side in comfortable silence until Mr. Richardson spoke. "You know, when I first started this project, some people on my board thought I was crazy. They said investing in this neighborhood was too risky." He straightened a row of chairs. "But they didn't see what I saw in you that day. The potential that exists in every young person when given a chance." The film crew arrived, setting up their equipment while children peeked curiously through the windows. The interviewer, a kind-faced woman, sat down with the boy first. Under the bright lights, he felt his nerves melting away as he shared their story. He talked about finding the wallet, about the choice he made that day, about Mr. Richardson's surprise visit, and how it changed not just his family's life, but the whole community. As he spoke, the camera panned across the center, the new computers waiting to help students with homework, the basketball court where kids could play safely, the library filled with books that could open new worlds. "The most important thing I've learned," the boy said, his voice growing stronger, "is that success isn't just about getting ahead yourself. It's about bringing others along with you." The crew then interviewed other neighborhood kids who'd already started using the center's resources. One boy talked about raising his grades with the help of tutoring. A girl shared how she discovered a love for coding through the computer classes. Each story added another thread to the tapestry of positive change. Mr. Richardson's interview focused on his vision for the future. "This isn't charity," he explained firmly. "This is investment in human potential. Every child deserves the opportunity to reach for their dreams, regardless of where they start in life." The boy's mom spoke last, her voice trembling slightly but her words clear and strong. She talked about the power of integrity, about watching her son grow not just in knowledge but in character, about how one act of honesty had opened doors they never knew existed. After the crew packed up their equipment and left, the boy and Mr. Richardson sat on the center's front steps, sharing a box of cookies someone had brought. The setting sun painted the sky in brilliant colors, almost as if celebrating with them. "You did well today," Mr. Richardson said softly. "You spoke from the heart." "I just told the truth," the boy shrugged, but he felt proud inside. "Sometimes that's the most powerful thing we can do," Mr. Richardson replied. "Tell our truth and let it inspire others." They watched as neighborhood kids played basketball on the new court, their laughter echoing across the evening air. Tomorrow, their story would start spreading beyond their neighborhood, maybe inspiring other communities to create their own centers of hope and opportunity. But for now, in this moment, the boy felt perfectly content. He understood that success wasn't just measured in dollars or achievements. It was measured in the lives you touched, the hope you sparked, and the dreams you helped others believe in. The documentary about the Second Chance Center aired on a warm Thursday evening. The boy's family gathered in their living room, along with Mr. Richardson and a few close neighbors. Their small TV, which had seen better days, was propped up on the old coffee table, surrounded by bowls of popcorn and nervous excitement. As their story unfolded on screen, the boy felt strange watching himself. His voice sounded different than he remembered, but his words rang true. The cameras had captured everything. The fresh paint of the center, the sparkle in kids' eyes as they used the new computers, the pride in his mom's smile as she talked about their journey. His phone started buzzing with messages from friends and classmates. The local news had picked up the story, and social media was lighting up with comments from people touched by their neighborhood's transformation. But what happened the next morning at school surprised him even more. "Hey," called out one of the older kids who'd always given him a hard time. "My dad watched that show last night. He cried, you know. Said it reminded him of when he was young, how one person believed in him and changed everything." The older boy shuffled his feet. "I was wondering, could you help me sign up for those computer classes at the center?" That afternoon, Mr. Richardson arrived at the center with more news. The story had caught the attention of business leaders in other cities. They want to know how they can start similar programs in their communities, he explained, showing the boy dozens of emails on his phone. "But I told them they need to understand something first. It's not just about building a fancy building. It's about believing in people." The boy nodded, remembering how it felt when Mr. Richardson first believed in him. "Could we help them? Show them how to do it right?" "That's exactly what I was thinking," Mr. Richardson smiled. "How would you feel about helping me create a guide for other communities? You know this center better than anyone. You've seen it grow from an idea to reality." Over the next few weeks, the center buzzed with even more activity than usual. People from neighboring cities came to visit, taking notes and asking questions. The boy found himself giving tours, explaining not just what they did, but why it mattered. "The computers are great," he told one group of visitors, "but what really makes this place special is how everyone looks out for each other." The older kids help the younger ones with homework. Parents volunteer to teach cooking classes. It's not just a building, it's a family. His own family was growing stronger too. His mom had earned a promotion at work, and his siblings were thriving in their studies. His little sister had started a reading club for younger kids at the center, while his brother was showing talent in the new art program. One evening, as he was locking up the center after a busy day, he found a small envelope slipped under the door. Inside was a letter from a 12-year-old girl who'd recently started coming to their programs. "Before the center opened," she wrote, "I thought people like me couldn't dream big. But now I know different. Yesterday, I told my mom I want to be a doctor someday. Instead of laughing, she hugged me and asked how we could make it happen. That's because of you and this place. You showed us it's okay to dream." The boy shared the letter with Mr. Richardson during their next mentoring session. They sat in what had become their usual spot, the center's small library, surrounded by books and the quiet hum of hope. "You see," Mr. Richardson said softly, "this is how real change happens, not through grand gestures, but through small acts of kindness that inspire others to believe in themselves." That weekend, they hosted a community celebration at the center. The basketball court was transformed into a party space, with tables full of home-cooked food and music filling the air. Looking around, the boy could hardly believe how much had changed in just a few months. Kids who used to spend their afternoons getting into trouble were now tutoring younger children. Parents who'd never talked to each other before were sharing recipes and job leads. Even the local police officer stopped by, not to check for problems, but to sign up as a volunteer basketball coach. As the sun set on their celebration, the boy found a quiet moment to sit with his mom on the center's front steps. They watched as Mr. Richardson played an impromptu game of chess with a group of enthusiastic kids, teaching them strategies and life lessons at the same time. "You know what makes me proudest?" his mom said, squeezing his hand. Not the TV show, or the visitors, or even all these amazing changes. It's that through everything, you've stayed true to yourself. You're still my boy who knew returning that wallet was the right thing to do, no matter what. The boy looked out at his transformed neighborhood, at the fresh hope in people's eyes, the new friendships being formed, the dreams taking root. He realized that sometimes the biggest changes start with the smallest choices, and that true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the lives we touch along the way. 1 year had passed since that fateful day when a young boy found a wallet on the street. The Second Chance Center was celebrating its first anniversary, and the neighborhood had gathered for a special ceremony. The old basketball court was filled with chairs, and a small stage had been set up near the entrance. The boy stood at the podium, his heart racing as he looked out at the familiar faces. His mom sat in the front row, tears of pride in her eyes. Next to her, his siblings couldn't stop grinning. Mr. Richardson stood off to the side, giving him an encouraging nod. "A year ago, the boy began, his voice steady despite his nerves. I was just a kid walking home from basketball practice. I found a wallet and did what my mom always taught me was right. I returned it. I didn't know that simple choice would change not just my life, but our whole community." He gestured to the center behind him. "Look at what we've built together. 25 kids from our neighborhood are now on track for college scholarships. Our computer classes have helped 30 parents find better jobs. The tutoring program has helped improve grades across every local school. But the numbers don't tell the whole story." The boy paused, looking at a group of younger kids sitting cross-legged on the floor near the stage. "Last week, a 7-year-old boy came to me with a toy car he'd found in the playground. He wanted to know how to find its owner. That's when I knew, we're not just building a center, we're building character. We're showing that integrity matters, that kindness counts, that we rise by lifting others." Mr. Richardson stepped up to the podium next, placing a gentle hand on the boy's shoulder. "When I lost my wallet that day, I found something far more valuable: hope. Hope in the next generation, hope in the power of community, hope in the simple truth that one good deed can spark a revolution of kindness." He unveiled a new plaque near the center's entrance. It read, "Every act of integrity plants a seed of hope." Below these words was an image of a wallet, simple but symbolic, reminding everyone where their journey began. The ceremony continued with stories from community members. A single mother spoke about how the center's childcare program allowed her to finish her degree. A teenager shared how the mentoring program helped him stay away from gang life. Each story added another thread to their tapestry of transformation. After the official ceremony, people lingered for the celebration. Tables of home-cooked food lined the basketball court, music played, and children darted between groups of talking adults. The boy found himself by the new community garden, where vegetables and flowers were beginning to bloom in raised beds. "You know what's amazing?" his mom said, joining him. "Remember how worried we were when that black SUV first pulled up to our house? Now look, Mr. Richardson's car is just another welcome sight in the neighborhood." The boy smiled, remembering his own nervousness that day. So much had changed since then. His mom had completed her computer certification and was now helping train others. His sister had started a newspaper club at the center, and his brother was teaching younger kids how to draw comics. As evening approached, Mr. Richardson gathered everyone for one final announcement. "Today marks not just our first anniversary," he said, "but the beginning of something bigger. 10 more Second Chance Centers will open across the country next year, and each one will have a young person like our boy here helping to lead it." The crowd erupted in cheers. The boy felt overwhelmed with emotion as Mr. Richardson continued, "But that's not all. We're establishing a full college scholarship program for kids who show the same kind of integrity and leadership that started all of this. Because sometimes all it takes is one person believing in you to change everything." Later that night, as the celebration wound down, the boy walked through the quiet center. The classrooms where dreams were taking shape, the library where worlds were being discovered, the art room where creativity flowed freely. Each space held countless stories of hope and transformation. He stopped at his favorite spot, a wall covered with photographs. There was one of him and Mr. Richardson from that first day, both looking slightly awkward but hopeful. Next to it hung pictures of community celebrations, tutoring sessions, and small victories. Each image captured a moment of change, a step forward, a dream taking flight. In his pocket, he felt the smooth metal of his new key to the center. He wasn't just a kid who found a wallet anymore. He was a leader, a mentor, a part of something bigger than himself. Tomorrow, he would help interview candidates for their youth leadership program, sharing his story and inspiring others to create their own ripples of change. As he locked up for the night, the boy paused to look at the stars above his transformed neighborhood. He thought about all the lives touched, all the dreams unleashed, all because of one small choice made with integrity. His grandmother's words echoed in his mind. Character is what you do when nobody's watching. But sometimes, he realized, when you do the right thing, the whole world ends up watching and joining in to help make things better.